Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the Computer Guy, and in today's class, I'm going to be showing you how to use prepared statements in PHP in order to insert records into your MySQL database tables. Now, up until this point, I've been showing you how to insert records into your MySQL database tables using PHP's code simply by using the variables to plug in the values in MySQL statements and then sending the entire MySQL statement. So basically what happens is the PHP code parses and creates a MySQL statement, and that full MySQL statement is sent to the MySQL database server. The MySQL database server then reads it and then processes basically whatever SQL that we have presented to it. Now, normally, if you don't have to worry about things like hackers, that's perfectly fine. We send the entire statement. The MySQL database server parses the statement. As long as everything is correct, things are processed properly. If not, an error is returned. No big deal. Normal computing process. But unfortunately, we've got to worry about those hackers. We have to worry about those hackers. And so one of the things to be thinking about is if we send the entire MySQL statement and you have something like an HTML form that the user is able to input data, that data is then created as a value for a variable. That value is then put into the SQL statement, and then the whole SQL statement is sent to the MySQL database server. One of the questions that has to be asked is, well, what if you have a hacker? What if you have a hacker that knows a little bit about how MySQL works? And so basically what they do is they can actually put in text to escape out of the SQL statement that is supposed to be sent to the MySQL database server and then actually insert their own SQL statement in order to do any number of nefarious things on the MySQL database server. Remember, that MySQL database server, it's simply going to parse the statement that it is presented with. So again, if there's a form or if there's some other kind of input option where the user is able to offer something to the PHP code and they know how that PHP code is going to write the MySQL statement, what they can try to do is they can try to escape out of the SQL statement that is being presented to the server and then basically insert their own SQL statement and then have the MySQL database server parse that. And then when that happens, again, any number of issues can occur. Tables can be deleted, tables or databases can be exported, can be backed up to, off-site servers, all kinds of fancy things. So basically when we're talking about SQL injection attacks, what we're talking about is the end user somehow is able to inject these SQL statements into what is supposed to be just a normal, innocuous transaction with the server. And then by doing that, they're able to then have some control of the server to do any number of things. And so that's a problem. And the problem there is that we're sending the entire SQL statement. So basically, again, with the PHP code, what happens is we plug in the SQL statement, and then there's $ and whatever the variable name is. And so all that happens is the value is put wherever the variable is stated, and then that whole statement is sent, and then the MySQL database server parses that whole statement, which can cause the problems. So what prepared statements do is kind of an interesting way of doing it, is what happens is you create a template for the SQL statement. So basically you create a template for the SQL statement and you put in these little question marks to say where values go. That is then sent to the MySQL database server. And then after that, the values that go where those question marks are supposed to be are then sent. And then what happens is MySQL then just plugs in the values in where it's supposed to go into the SQL statement. And then if somebody tries to inject any kind of code, basically all that's going to happen is an error, right? Because the template for the SQL statement is sent first. And then after that, the values are supposed to get plugged in are sent. And so basically, if those values are bad values, again, there are escape characters or whatever else, they just get flushed out and there's an error or some other thing occurs. Basically, you don't have to worry about the SQL injection where the end user, that hacker, tries to take over your MySQL database server. So what I'm going to be showing you how to do today is prepared statements. It's relatively easy. It's relatively simple. Yeah. There are no big warnings for today. The only thing that I will tell you, especially if you are new to using PHP and MySQL and all that kind of stuff, is that when we do these prepared statements, we add a couple of levels of complexity for being able to insert records into your MySQL database table. So normally, again, we just create the SQL statement, $SQL, whatever that SQL statement is, we just plug it in and everything is relatively simple. With prepared statements, it's not a whole lot harder. But there are a couple of steps, and you do have to be careful to make sure you do all of those steps, or you can run into some problems, you can run into some errors. So with that, let's go over to the computer, and I'll show you how these prepared statements work. So here we are back at my lab machine. Again, I've got Ubuntu Desktop 18.04 LTS running, but really any Ubuntu desktop should work for you. I have this running in a virtual machine in VirtualBox, and this is running on my MacBook Pro. In order to get the full LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, I used a tool called TaskSell, TaskSEL. That installed the full LAMP stack onto this Ubuntu desktop. I have not modified any of the default options, php.ini, vhosts, all of that are exactly the same. The only thing that I've done is I've created a folder in the Apache root directory called PHP, just as a simple place to dump all of my PHP files, scripts. As far as the text editor goes, I am using gedit. I'm not using any fancy IDE or anything because, again, when I'm doing simple coding, I like to show you folks that, yes, you really can use just a normal text editor, whether it's gedit, whether it's a notepad, whether it's text edit, whatever else. So this is the system that we're dealing with. So the first thing, as always, let's go over to our database server so we know what's going on. So we're going to go to terminal. If I can spell today, I'm going to do a terminal. We're going to log into MySQL space -u, username space -p for the password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're into MySQL. We are going to use class DB. So the class DB is the database that we're using for all of these labs. Semicolon, of course. Once we're in here, again, we do show tables, just so we know what tables we're dealing with. We have a whole bunch of tables in here, and the table that we'll be dealing with today is the students table. Just to verify what's going on with the students table, we can do DESC, describe students, semicolon. So this shows us we have a student underscore ID field. This is a primary key. It's an auto increment, and it is an integer. So again, this is just our record field. We have a name, we have an age, we have a gender, and we have a uniform field. Name is text, age is an integer, gender is text, and uniform is text. If we go and do select all from students, if I can spell correctly today, semicolon, we can see we have a whole bunch of records in here at this point. So we're all the way down to 34 records. Last person entered was Lewis, at 21 years old, is a boy, and does not have a uniform. So let's go over and take a look at the form that we're going to be dealing with today. So this is an basic HTML form. So just so you understand what this little project looks like, if we go over to Firefox, we can just go 127.0.0.1. This is the loopback address, /PHP to get in that PHP folder. And then what we want is the statement form. So we created this the little HTML form called statement form. And so what this is going to do is it's going to ask for a name, it's going to ask for an age, and it's going to ask for a gender. And then you're going to be able to submit that and basically insert a record. So let's just take a look at the form for a second. This is just a completely normal HTML form, nothing in here. Open HTML, open body, we have a form, the action equals this nasty ass name. Don't do as I do. Don't do this. You ever have those times when you're just like trying to figure out the name for something and then the stupid thing gets way too long? Anyways, so PHP prepared statement insert.php. Basically, the name, age, and gender is going to be sent to a script with that stupid name. That's way too long. Don't name anything like that. And it is going to be a post method. So if you've been following along with the other classes, again, this is just a normal HTML form. Ask for name, ask for an age, ask for gender, name, text, it's named name. Age also is a text box. It's named age. Gender is an option box. It's named gender. Default value is nothing. One option is boy, one option is girl. And then there's just simply a submit button, close body, close HTML. So now we're going to go over and actually take a look at this nasty, yeah, don't name anything like this. I don't know what I was thinking. PHP, prepared statement insert.php. Horrible name. Anyways, let's take a look at this. And a lot of this actually looks pretty close to everything that we've seen before. Okay, the statement form is going to send the name, the age, and the gender to the script. We're going to open up the PHP script. We then have to create the variables and the variable values that we're going to be inserting into the MySQL database table. So we create $name, $age, $gender. And these are going to equal the post values. So post or $underscore post, and then name, $_post, age, $_post, gender. So we've done this in other projects at this point. This is simply grabbing the value of these names that come from the form, name, age, and gender. We are then assigning those values to the new variables we've created in PHP here so that we can interact with them in PHP. The next code here is the same code we've seen 1,000 times at this point. Server name, username, password, and database. So it's a local host. So it's just a local host. Username of Bob, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and database of class DB, as I just showed you. We're then going to create the connection like we normally do. So $con equals a new MySQL. We're going to pass the server name. We're going to pass the username. We're going to pass the password, and we're going to pass the database. Then we're going to close parentheses, and of course we're going to do a semicolon because this is PHP. We're then going to do the if the connection doesn't work. So for some reason there's a connection error. You misspelled the username, you screwed up the password or something like that. Basically, $connection. If there is an error, kill the connection, say the connection failed, and then say whatever the error is. Same stuff as we've seen 1,000 times at this point. Now down here is where we actually get to the interesting stuff. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our statement. So this is the prepared statement itself, and basically we're creating it as a variable, just like we created the connection variable up here. And so I've just decided to call this a $statement, so you know what it is. And so $statement equals, so the connection, $con, so this whole thing. And then you're going to do this little arrow symbol, as we've done for a few things in the past. And then we're going to say prepare. So we're creating that prepared statement. We then do parentheses. So this is all going to be inside of parentheses. Then we're going to do the double quotation marks. And then we're simply going to do the prepared statement. So we're doing an insert. So insert into students, same as we've seen before. Parentheses, column names, name, age, gender. So again, same as you've seen before. Close parentheses, values, same as you've seen before. Here's where it gets to be different. We do question mark, comma, question mark, comma, question mark. So these are the three columns. So before, where we would plug in here $name, $age, $gender, and the values would simply be plopped into there, and this whole thing would be sent over to the SQL server. Now, again, we're just sending over a template. We're sending over a template saying, this is what the SQL statement looks like, and next we will send the values. So the values and the template are sent differently. So basically, again, it's just question marks. You only do question marks. It doesn't matter if it's an integer. It doesn't matter if you're going to be sending a string or anything like that. There is no quotation marks or double quotation marks in these values. It's just however many values you're going to send. So however many columns you have, that's how many question marks you should have over here. Close that parentheses, of course. Then you're going to close the double quotation mark like you do normally, and then you're going to close these parentheses here. So all of this gets enclosed within a parentheses, and then since it's PHP, you end with a semicolon. Then down here, so again, this right here is creating the template for the SQL statement. And then now down here, we're actually going to bind the parameters to that template. So we're going to say what the parameters are. So then, again, we call the statement. So the statement, and then we're going to say bind parameters. So a little arrow thing, bind underscore param. open parentheses. And then this first thing here is we're going to be saying what type of values we will be sending. So you enclose this within double quotation marks. And then what I have here is string, integer, string. So name, age, gender. Right? So if I was sending 3 strings, so let's say first name, last name, gender, this would be SSS. Anyways, it would be SSS. If it was 3 numbers, then it might be I. So you can have S, so it can be a string, it can be an I, it can be an integer. It can be a D. This is an important one. A D is a double. A double is any number with a decimal point. So when you're actually dealing with PHP and MySQL, there's a number of different data types with decimal points. As far as this is concerned, it's not looking at 1,000 different data types with decimals. It just wants to know, is there a decimal or not? So if it's I, that means there's no decimal. If it's D, that means there's some decimal. So SID or B for blob. So a blob is kind of like this. If you're going to be doing things like files, PDFs, and that type of thing, you could actually insert that. So B would be for a blob. So this is going to be string, integer, string, name, age, gender. Close parentheses, of course, and then do semicolon. Then the next thing that we have to do is, so we've created the statement, we've bound the parameters for what the statement should be, and then what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be executing, all right? So we do a $ statement, then we get the little arrow thing, and then we say execute. Execute, go do it. After that, all we're going to be doing here is we're going to be echoing out that this actually worked. So echo added, name, age, gender, break if you want to break. And so basically this just shows us, this actually just prints out to the screen that these things have been added. The final thing here is that we actually have to close the statement. So $ statement, and a little arrow thing, and then close with the 2 parentheses. So we actually have to close this thing. So it has to know that it can actually release those resources. So this is one of those things, again, in a non-production environment, you might not run into problems with this, but in a production environment, you will. So basically, when you create the prepared statement, that uses up resources on your server. And so in order to release those services in the most appropriate time, when you are done using the prepared statement, you should close the prepared statement so that those resources go back to the server. Again, if you have a machine like this, it will automatically close the prepared statements after a while. So you won't see any problem on again, your own little virtual machine, but in a production environment you would. And that's really all there is. And then again, down here we have $ connection close, and it closes. If we go over, we take a look at it, there's not a lot of difference here. Again, name, Susan, age is, 11, and gender, let's say, is a girl. We can submit the query. If we go over to our MySQL database, select all from students, we can now see Susan, 11, girl. There's not a lot of difference you can really see here. One of the big ones is, again, when for the prepared statement where we say whether something is supposed to be an integer or not. Again, one of the big problems with databases is if somebody can put a string into a field that is supposed to be an integer, you can run into a lot of problems. Like if you're trying to do averages or you're trying to add things up and you have wrong data types in the field. One of the nice things with this is, let's say if I wanted to do Patsy, and then I'm not thinking about it, and I say Klein here, and then I say girl. One of the nice parts that you can actually see with using a prepared statement, if I do submit query, now I gotta notice here, it says added Patsy Klein girl, but if we go and we do a select all from students, what you'll notice here is since it's not an integer, it was a string instead of being an integer, all that happens is a 0 gets placed in that age. So the nice part here is at least you know there's a problem. You're like, oh, I've got to go back and I've got to get that age. Where again, like a lot of times with databases, if you can insert, if the wrong type of data gets inserted, you can have a lot of problems. So at least with this, you've got a 0, so you know that there's an issue there and you can go and deal with it. But basically, that's all we're dealing with these prepared statements. So we're going to create the template for the statement here. All of this, again, con prepare, this will be inside parentheses. Then for the values, again, for insert, we're going to do question mark, comma, question mark, comma, question mark, again, for however many columns we have. We're then going to go down here, we're going to bind the parameters. Within double quotation marks, we're going to say what these columns are supposed to be. So again, string, integer, string. And then here is where we're going to put the variables, $name, $age, $gender. We're then going to go down, we're going to do statement, we're going to execute. If you want to echo out something on the screen, if you want to print something out on the screen, you can do that here. And then you're going to do statement, and then you're going to close. Again, this is not absolutely required, but it is a smart idea, so try not to forget that. And that's really all you've got with these prepared statements. Yay! Now you know how to do prepared statements. And so maybe the old timers will get off my buttocks. Probably not, but maybe. So whenever I do these videos, I create these videos, I publish them about an hour after I get done editing them. And as such, I have a lot of old timers that are screaming at me for how I've been showing you how to deal with PHP and MySQL. It's not secure, Eli. It's not secure. You need to do prepared statements. Again, I have a way of teaching. If you don't like the way I teach, you don't gotta watch the videos. But I teach basically trying to show people the simplest way to do things. Again, a lot of times I genuinely strip out security. Again, I'm not telling you to put some of the stuff that I do into production environment, but I want you to understand that you can build things. And then once you know you can build something, then I want you to learn how to make it better, make it more secure. And then a few steps down the line, then you have something that can be facing the web. So what I've been showing you up until this point with sending the complete SQL statements, again, it works, it's functional, it's easy, but, and I will say this, depending upon your security environment, may not be the best way to go. Using prepared statements is a way to try to secure your database server and protect your overall environment. Now, I will say with these prepared statements, it's kind of like antivirus or firewall. One thing does not protect your database server. It's not like you use prepared statements and now everything's perfect. Again, it does prevent MySQL injection attacks, but you may have other vectors of attack towards your systems. Again, if somebody can actually get in and somehow can modify your PHP code, or again, depending on your JavaScript or other things, there may be other ways to attack your systems. This is simply a way to try to prevent those MySQL injection attacks. Again, it's one thing. Again, it's like antivirus, right? You want antivirus, and you want a firewall, and you want security policies, and you want a backup, and you want a number of different things. Having all of that then theoretically protects your systems. Again, using prepared statements is a single way that you can try to mitigate the damage towards your SQL servers, but it's not the only thing. So don't feel like, oh, I know prepared statements, so therefore my servers will be secure. One of the things I will say with this is go out there and do your own research for using these prepared statements, especially if you're looking at using prepared statements in a production environment. As I was doing research for this class, it was interesting to see both the benefits of using prepared statements, again, for those injection attacks, but also then seeing some of the downsides. So like with the downsides of using prepared statements is depending on the context you're using them in, they can actually end up using more server resources. So this may not be a problem, right? If you've got a virtual machine, right? You've got a virtual machine and you're just interacting with the virtual machine, using a couple more compute cycles isn't going to matter. But, right, if you've got a production environment, you've got, 10,000 users hitting your server every hour, using prepared statements, if you don't necessarily need to use a prepared statements, may increase your server load to a degree that's unacceptable. So with this, again, it's just like antivirus, it's just like fire. Everybody has this idea, like with security, like security is good, antivirus is good, firewall is good. And again, like 99% of the time, yeah. But I have seen antivirus just, brutalize some machines, and you run into that problem. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if a hacker crashes your system, is that worse than if the antivirus crashes your system? You've still got a crash system, right? Again, depending on what kind of world you're living in. So again, with these prepared statements, if you're looking at using them in a production environment, take a look, do some research about it. It is very interesting things with like data cleansing. So there are ways to basically clean them as the variables are sent, as the values are created. There's multiple different ways of actually trying to clean up those values. Again, to do things like prevent SQL injection attacks. And in a production environment, there may be another method of basically getting the ability to strip out possible SQL injection attacks that are not necessarily these prepared statements. Right? Again, for you, it's probably good. You know, if you're going to put something out facing towards the web, you're not really worried about counting every compute cycle. Prepared statements are probably fine, but it's a type of thing to research and again to figure out how you're going to do things. As I say, you know, there's 20 ways to skin a cat. You just have to figure out the proper way to do it. How do I skin a cat in this particular situation? And I think that's what a lot of technology professionals and a lot of coders really don't think about. They don't think about the context. They don't think about the situation. They just say, this is right, this is wrong. When in reality, at the end of the day, depends on what you're doing. So anyways, that's some prepared statements for you. So prepared statements basically allow you to send the template for the statement and the values for the statement separately. This helps prevent SQL injection attacks. As always, I enjoy doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.